wanted to show you how I use Inkscape in a really simple way to make rounded or curved letters. And that's usually, in my case, for custom signs, but you could do it for other things as well. Inkscape is a great free program, a little bit of a learning curve, but once you learn how to do some things that you do repetitively, like doing text, curved text for signs, that kind of thing for CNCs, it actually is fairly simple, but a little bit of a barrier to entry there. But let's presume I've got a 5x5 piece of wood that I'm going to make into a sign. It can be any size. I like to make the document, which is outlined in the black lines in this picture, into that size. So we go to File, Document Properties, and the Document Properties pops up on the right. And this is where we're going to get the size of our document. I switch to inches because that's what I'm used to. And we'll switch to a 5x5 square. And then we can get rid of the document properties. So I'll center that a little bit. So now we're ready to put our text onto a curve. The easiest curve to start with is doing a circle. You can do all kinds of different shapes and put the text on that, but we'll show you what it's like with a circle. So I click the circle tool, and I have a Mac, so if I hold Shift and Control down and drag with the mouse in the correct orientation, I will get a perfect circle. So I look at that, and there's a couple problems. It's not in the right place because it's not in my wood, but also the thickness of the line is too thick. So I want to change that, and I'll go to Objects, Fill and Stroke. We'll get a little tab over here. I don't want it to be filled with anything. Being empty is fine, but the stroke style is too thick. So we'll go right here and make that 0.5 millimeters. And that's much better. So I've got the appearance of the circle better, but now I want to get it into the center of my 5x5 piece of wood. So I go to the alignment tool up here. That pops up on the right. And remember, our page is this square I made, and I want that circle in the middle. So the circle is already selected. I go center on a vertical axis, center on a horizontal axis, and it's right in the middle. So that's good. Now I want to make sure that I've got the circle the appropriate size. So once it's selected, you can come up here and see the width and the height. Well, that's in millimeters, and I don't speak millimeter very often. So you can see the size that is. So we'll change that to a 4x4, or since it's a circle, just a 4-inch circle, but you have to specify height and width. And now again, we have to make sure we're aligned because we've changed the size of it. There we go. So now we're centered. So we've got our circle where we want it, and we're ready to put text on that. So we go to our text tool, which is the big A on the side. And this is a text font that I use a lot. Athelis, I believe it's called. And that size is pretty reasonable. So we click anywhere and type our text. So we're good. Now we want to take this text and put it on that circle. So remember, when you're using Inkscape, we want to eventually create vectors or paths to make it into an SVG file that a CNC machine can read. When you make text, that is not a path, that is not a vector. A CNC machine can't read this. So if you save this file, you won't see anything where it says rounded text. We will convert it to a path later. But right now, we need it just the way it is. So we're going to select that. We're going to hold down Shift and select the circle so that both of these things are selected. And we want to put the path, the text on path. So put it on path. Beautiful. It's now on our circle. It's in the wrong place though. So there's a couple ways you can fix it. With a perfect circle, you can select the circle once and then twice. Now the arrows turn into curves and you can turn the circle on its axis, which will turn the text. However, if you're going to use another style of shape that's not a circle, you want to have another way of making sure your text will rotate appropriately. So the best way of doing it is to select your circle, hit Command D, which gives you a copy. You can't see it because they're overlying each other. But now we're going to take the copied circle and squeeze it down. And by holding Shift and Control at the same time, it centers it exactly. We can magnify that a little bit. Probably want this even just a little bit smaller. So once you've got it pretty small, we're going to use that as a guide for our text. So now select our text, and that's actually what we want to rotate. If you hit it twice, now those corners will turn, and that means we can turn our text. If we do it where it's at right now, it's just going to spin in place here. This is what it rotates around. So we want this to be moved to the center of that small circle. Magnify that up a little bit. And that's pretty good. So now our text will rotate, but around this area. So as we back out even more, take our text, and we can rotate it all the way around that circle to where we want it, near the top. So that looks pretty good. To see if we're pretty well centered on the top of that circle, we can go to the top ruler and by pressing and holding, we can bring down a guide. And you can bring that guide down to the bottom of the R and the T and make sure you're pretty close. If you're off a little bit, you can adjust just a touch, probably being too picky. And then we can get rid of that guide. So there's our text on a circle. Now there's two problems. Remember, this is text, not a vector or a path. And we don't want to have either of these circles in here when we create an SVG file for our CNC machine. So first, we're going to pick our text, and we're going to go to Path, Object to Path. Now it's not text anymore. It's a vector, and you can check that by taking your Edit Path by Nodes, or a vector detector, and go over the letters, and you can see that they turn red. That means it's a vector, just like anything that you draw, like that circle. Once it's a vector, it's not attached to the circle anymore. And we can get rid of the circles. And now you've got your text. Suppose now you want to put text on the inside of a circle. In other words, you want text to be rounded down here too. It's the same process with a couple tricks. So we already have our page outline, the size of our wood, 5 by 5. We need to make another circle. So we click our circle tool, Shift and Control, got my circle made. Again, the stroke is too big. I can fix that, but you know how to do that. What we do want to do though is get this to an appropriate size, and this will be a bigger circle than the other one that was 4 inches. We're going to make this bigger because the text is going to be in the inside of it now. So we'll make this 5 inches by 5 inches. And now we want it centered again. So we'll go over to our line and distribute and center it. And then it's the same thing we did before. Hit our text tool. Create our text. Select our text and our circle. And we're going to take that text, put it on the path. So it shows up just like before, the rounded text on the outside. What we can do with this is flip it to make it on the inside. So select just the circle and go to Object, Flip Vertical, and now your text is on the inside. And we can go through the same process of selecting our circle, making a copy of it, squeezing that down, clicking on our text twice, and taking the little centering arrow, putting it there, and bringing our text down. And now we do the same type of things to make our text a path. And once that's done, get rid of our circles. And then you can save this as an SVG file. Make it any name you want up here. Inkscape SVG is reasonable. It seems to work pretty well on my CNC machine. And hit save. And you're ready to put that directly into your CNC machine or laser, and you're good to go. So I hope that helps you guys out.